The Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing on the ratification of the 2014 and 2018 amendments to the Maritime Labour Convention of 2006, the International Labour Organization Convention C-185, amended Convention on Seafarers' Identity Documents of 2003, the International Labour Organization Convention C-188, in brackets, Work in Fishing Convention of 2007, the International Convention on the Standards. Member for Kibwezi, please. You get excited every time you sit next to a member for Busia. The training, the International Convention on the Standards of Training, Certification and Work-Keeping for Fishing Vessel Personnel of 1995, and the Cape Town Agreement of 2012 on safety of fishing vessels laid on the table of the House on Thursday, September 23rd, 2021, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8, Subsection 4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, approves the ratification of 1, the amendments to the Maritime Labour Convention of 2006, 2014, and 2018 amendments. 2, the International Labour Organization Convention C-185, amended Convention on Seafarers' Identity Documents of 2003. 3, the International Labour Organization Convention C-188, Work in Fishing Vessel of Convention of 2007. 4, the International Convention on the Standards of Training, Certification, and Work-Keeping for Fishing Vessel Personnel of 1995. And 5, the Cape Town Agreement of 2012 on Safety of Fishing Vessels. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next.
Order number 10, motion, report on a public petition regarding recognition of the Pemba people of Kenya as citizens of the Republic of Kenya. Question to be put.
Member for Katanga, member for Katanga. No, just take a seat. Even there, it is not harmful. It is very easy to walk out from there, you know. I always take note of the people who like sitting at that corner. And that other corner there, because they have a way of exiting the chamber. Is this the Honorable? Very honorable members, this last one, I put the question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on its consideration of a public petition regarding recognition of the Pemba people of Kenya as citizens of the Republic of Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, August 11, 2021. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of contrary opinion say nay? No. The ayes have it. Now, yeah? Yeah, Honorable Duale, what is it?
Mr. Speaker, I rise understanding Order 83 to rise on a point of order on a very fundamental constitutional question touching on the Health Laws Amendment Bill 2021. Mr. Speaker, I really want you to indulge me because it's Order number 13 No, yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. It's order number 13, because, and I'm not imputing any bad motive on the other deputy speaker and the panel, but by the time we reach them, Mr. Speaker, because of order number 11, you will not be on the chair. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want you to allow me to raise this matter so that as our substantive speaker, you can guide the House. Mr. Speaker, on the onset, this bill intends to amend a total of 17 acts in the health sector, including the Pharmacy and Poison Act, the Mental Health Act, the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Act, the Nurses Act, and the Kenya Medical Training College Act, among others. And Mr. Speaker, these amendments seek to align the appointment of various boards under the several acts in order to align them with the Mwongozo guidelines. But Mr. Speaker, I have read the report of the committee, on the health committee, and I went through their deliberation that went when they met stakeholders. I had to get a copy of the Hansard, Mr. Speaker, and went through this the whole of yesterday, Monday, until late evening. And I was lucky because, you know, Facebook and WhatsApp were suspended last night. They were not working, so I had a lot of time to read. And Mr. Speaker, the fundamental issues, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise. And Mr. Speaker, this bill was committed to the Health Committee for public participation in terms of Article 118 and Standing Order 127. Speaker, I don't want to tire to restate what you have guided this House before, severally, that public participation within the reading of Article 118 should not be cosmetic exercise. We all know what happened to bills that have been subjected to cosmetic public participation process. They all die, and several bills of this House have suffered this fate when challenged in a competent court of law. Mr. Speaker, it's on this record that several bodies in the health sector, including the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers and Kenya Clinical Officers Association, the body that regulates medical doctors in this country, pharmacists, nurses, Mr. Speaker, I can continue, among others, despite submitting memorandums, Mr. Speaker, to be considered by the committee, Mr. Speaker, they can confirm to this House that the committee in its report completely disregarded their submission. And in disregard of Article 118 of the Constitution, they never considered one single memoranda or even given some of these institutions and bodies an opportunity to appear before the committee to prosecute. Speaker, I'm not saying it out of the blues, and I have looked at the report. Speaker, in this regard, the question that begs this House is, to what extent can this bill proceed for second reading when the committee had not properly conducted public participation as required by the Constitution and as required by our own Standing Order 127. Speaker, you have ruled a number of times that a bill without public participation is as dead as the dodo. The bill before this House, Mr. Speaker, has made several proposals, Mr. Speaker, to various boards of parastatals in the health sector to be fully represented by government without any representative from the private sector or professional bodies, and not even the medical practitioners. Mr. Speaker, without checks and balances, to what extent shall the national values and principles, Speaker, the hallmark, the basis of these boards is anchored on good governance. Even Mwongozo is based on good governance. That government shall be running boards without any check and balance. This, Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, is a total negation of Article 10 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this will become a government body. Will this amendment not throw out accountability and transparency, Mr. Speaker, Indeed, where there is no second voice, Mr. Speaker, in anything, tyranny and impunity sets in, Mr. Speaker. Who represents the private sector interests in such boards? Who represents the interests of the many professional bodies which are recognized in the statutes passed by this House? Speaker, it is notable that although the boards are allowed to nominate 4 other persons, not being public officers, to be members, then these ones shall only be the appointees of the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Speaker. That Minister Kagwe will have the leeway to pick who he wants, Mr. Speaker, and not bodies that are functional, that have membership, that pay their subscription to their organizations. And Mr. Speaker, if we go this route, then this House will set a very bad precedent. It's the same House that even established, and I was the leader of majority, Mr. Speaker, the Law Society of Kenya Act, that you are a member. And Mr. Speaker, that the Cabinet Secretary can dictate to whoever he wants to appoint. Mr. Speaker, these amendments are therefore untenable. They negate the realization of the national values and principles as provided in Article 10 of the Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, I really want that this House, as people were speaking for teachers, Mr. Speaker, I didn't raise my hand because I wanted us also to speak for the nurses, for the clinical officers, for the pharmacists, for the doctors, who as members of parliament, we represent their interests, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want you to give us guidance on this matter. And I seek your guidance on the constitutionality of the Health Laws Amendment Bill 2021 in view and in as far as the requirements of Article 10 and Article 18 of the Constitution and Standing Order 127 is concerned. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Seli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to state from the outset that I'm a member of the Health Committee, but I'm aggrieved because, in fact, I would say that this report of the committee is before this House fraudulently. Because, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make a minority dissenting report, and the clerk declined and denied me secretarial services so that I could do that minority report by arguing that I cannot do a minority report on a bill. Mr. Speaker, I was so aggrieved that I felt that there was a sinister motive behind this health laws amendment. So, Mr. Speaker, I agree with the Honorable Duale that you look at it carefully before you allow any debate on these amendments to go on. Because, Mr. Speaker, as a professional myself, a highly qualified doctor, if I were to be regulated by the Medical and Dentist Council, I pay my subscriptions. That is the money that runs the council. That's the money that has built that magnificent building next to DOD. How can I be told that I cannot be part of the regulation, that I cannot be on that board, that I cannot be on that council? Somebody else will put on that council to regulate me. I think it's, for lack of a better word, it's madness. It's madness. Mr. Speaker, as a professional yourself, a lawyer of high standing in this country, you know how self-regulation is supposed to be. Mr. Speaker, I beg you, look at this amendment bill properly before you allow the House to continue debating on it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable TJ.
Mr. Speaker, sir, they are coming for the nurses and the doctors. Next, they will come for the lawyers. And if they get the lawyers, I suppose they are going to come for the Council of Former Speakers. Which, Mr. Speaker, you will not join that council since, Mr. Speaker, sir, the faithful one will be the president of this country. But allow me to say this, Mr. Speaker. This Mwongozo that is being touted all over, I sat on the delegated committee. As an instrument to consider as the law requires. And we took it that, well, Mwongozo is just like any other paper in those offices, those beautiful offices. And as long as it does not affect us, we will leave it at that. But you know, Mr. Speaker, under the Constitution, any edict of law, anything which appears or demands Kenyans to obey in some way, must have a force of law. And that force of law can only be granted by this or that other house. That is the law. In fact, looking at the interpretation of the word instrument under the Instruments Act, guidelines is specifically provided for. So if this Mwongozo guidelines has this type of force of law, the first thing they must bring as a substantive policy of underlying these health laws would be to bring this policy before us, and we approve it. Then it becomes something fundamental on which they can predicate these amendments that they're talking about. Number one. Number two, how many times, Mr. Speaker, will we talk about miscellaneous laws amendments? We have spoken about it. In the other parliament, the environment was a little sour. But in this parliament, we have agreed on so many things, including the fact that if there are issues which demand substantive legislation, must come as a result of standalone bills or amendment bills to be considered on their own merit. I have been with the leader of majority in several forums, and he agrees that you cannot bring issues which are fundamental and call them miscellaneous amendments. He knows that. I do not know at what point there is a disconnect between this house and those other people sitting in palatial offices. I am sure they are not taking instructions from the leader of majority. If they were, he would have quickly told them that, look, this is not how legislation is done. Give me small things which merely cure the gaps or the lacuna in law, but not issues weighty as such as this. Number two. Number three, and the last one, Mr. Speaker. Kenya, by dint of the Constitution, is bound by international convention. International convention is about freedom of professional practice. And so you find that doctors are governed and regulated by peer regulation. They must regulate themselves. All over, all literature suggests that when professionals are, when they regulate themselves, there is better value because they are the professionals and they want to make things much better for their professions. Anytime world over, when government has had to intrude into self-management of internal organizations, they fail. Now think of a situation, Mr. Speaker, that maybe the Attorney General or maybe the solicitor or somebody wants to come and regulate how LSK must function, including who and who not to give practice certificates in the legal fraternity. Now, we hold no brief for being professionals. We are because that is what God made us to be. But allow Kenyans to get best services for professionals. Now, if you want to rein, and I know they have reined, in fact, I've seen a bill, which has been published, by the way, Mr. Speaker, which is targeting lawyers. We will speak on it when that time comes. But the point is that I do not know where this appetite is on foraging on professionals. Today they are on lawyers, the next day they are on architects, another day they are on engineers, the other day they were in accountants. I mean, it can only be that there is an interior motive which is not advised or which is not coming from a point of reasoning or a point of professional discussion. So, Mr. Speaker, together with the decision that Honorable Duale has begged you to give on its constitutionality, I think you may want to consider whether this is in keeping with international best practices and international conventions by which Kenya is a party, and whether, since the memorandum of this bill is tied to mwongozo, whether there is something in your view called mwongozo until such a time that it's presented before you and discussed by this House. Mr. Speaker, I beg you to, for the last time, and the Minister, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, is a veteran member, he was a veteran member of this House, but I don't know, between this House and the other House, something must have happened. Because you see his reasoning, you wonder whether graduating from this House to the other House creates a problem in people's way of appreciating things. So, for the last time, please show by way of a detailed ruling that during your tenure, this is how miscellaneous legislation should look like, and this is how substantive legislation should look, for avoidance of doubt, so that in future, we don't have these running battles about miscellaneous regulations, or legislation, or substantive legislation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kitutu Masaba.
Honorable Speaker, also support. I entirely agree with what Honorable Duare has said, because, Honorable Speaker, this kind of omnibus bills tend to actually come in with a few to rob out. I would Honorable Speaker, say that if we allow this kind of bills, which in one way or the other are intruding to professional areas, just like Honorable Eseria said, that would, Honorable Speaker, really mess. And therefore, we would appreciate that you really give your recent decision on this matter. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Member for Rarienda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have carefully considered this bill. And the essence of this bill is to abolish the more progressive approach of allowing self-regulation by professionals for the more retrogressive approach of control of professional bodies by the state. And Mr. Speaker, there are many reasons, and if it was to graduate to that, why we would oppose this. I have personally identified over 20. But only in the context of what Honorable Duale has raised, Mr. Speaker, I think there are 4 points to consider. The first one is, in the memorandum of objects, this bill purports to say that these amendments are being done to align these laws with the Constitution and the Mwongozo Code for state corporations. 2 problems with that, Mr. Speaker. There is nothing in the Constitution that requires an amendment of any of these laws at all, and the report does not even purport to identify that. Secondly, the Mwongozo Code is not law, it is a code, it is a policy. You cannot purport to amend substantive legislation to accord with policy. It should be vice versa. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, the bodies sought to be reorganized are not state corporations. These are professional bodies that are operating outside of the state. And therefore, even the premise of the amendment is wrong. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, to the extent that these bodies comprise professionals who pay subscriptions, and therefore they're actually associations. They are associations that are protected by Article 36 of the Constitution. To that extent, Mr. Speaker, if you are to abolish them, if you are to reconstitute them, to the extent that the professionals lose control, it's like withdrawal of registration. That is expressly prohibited by Article 36, 3A and B. In fact, 3B even goes further to say, even if you are to consider, there must be a proper and fair hearing. That proper and fair hearing has not been given to any of these professional organizations by the committee. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, it offends a very basic principle, the constitutional principle of restraint of state power, that state power will be exercised only for the organs that belong to the state, not for organs outside of the state. To the extent that they are now giving the president, they are seeking to give the president the power to appoint chairpersons of all these professional bodies, and then the CS comes in to appoint other people, and then they reduce even those who can come from the professional bodies. Mr. Speaker, this is actually allowing the president and the executive to exercise state power outside of the state, and that cannot be constitutional. In fact, Mr. Speaker, will I invite you to consider a more fundamental issue. A careful reading of Article 132 thoroughly restrains the powers of the president and states what the president can do and cannot do. And the only leeway it allows is now under 132 4A, where it allows the president to establish a public office. It means, and that before that is done, there must be legislation that enables that. So the only extension that then the president gets is if legislation allows the president to exercise that power, and if it's a public office. These are not public offices. These are professional offices. How can then the president come in to determine for professionals who to be their chair? That is unconstitutional. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, if you look then at what is proposed as clause 3.2, it's even more intriguing. It allows, and it's repeated for all the other bodies, it allows the cabinet secretary to appoint some people, some 4 persons, through conventional board resourcing procedures, including through applications, referrals, and knowledge of the market. Whatever that means, I don't know. But the one thing it certainly means is that it throws out Article 10 of the Constitution, it throws out Article 232 of the Constitution that require transparency and meritocracy in appointive offices. Now it's purporting to give the cabinet secretary the discretion to appoint anyone, and if you ask them, they'll say it was through referral or knowledge. That cannot be constitutional. Mr. Speaker, I urge you to save this House time and the embarrassment that might be caused even by debating this proposed bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm actually surprised that we have hijacked the debate on the bill by trying to preempt it from coming on the floor. And I want to, first of all, clarify that contrary to what the senior counsel has said, that this bill is linking to the Constitution, has nothing to do with the Constitution, it's very clear you have not read the bill. Because if you had, you would see that part of the bill, there's a whole reference of it, page 9, is about changing the nomenclature for ministers to cabinet secretary in line with the new Constitution. And that goes on across many other laws. So it's actually true that the bill is premised on aligning laws, the various laws in the health sector, to the Constitution. The bill is also looking at some, it's not based on only the professional bodies. CAMSA is not a professional body, but it's being affected. NHIF is not a professional body, it's affected. It's several laws within the health sector. And this is not the first time it's happening. We did it in 2017, and we've done it with the tax laws amendment, where we look at all laws to do with tax and amend them within one omnibus law. Because the thread that's running across all this is the management bodies of all those institutions under the health sector. And whether you bring it as a standalone, 27 bills, or one bill, and I remember we had this discussion just last week in the Committee of the Whole, where members said, instead of keeping on changing within each bill, why don't we have one omnibus law that basically says, change every reference in all the laws from minister to cabinet secretary. We had this discussion last week. So it's actually not true to then say that this is a miscellaneous amendment bill. This is specific to laws within the health sector and covering the various bodies. Now, I know there's been a bit talked about on the Mwongozo Code and harmonizing, but since I came into this house in 2017, every law that changes the board or composition of the board, and you can check on the Hansard, has the operating that we are doing this to comply with the Mwongozo Code. Now, business in this house is regulated through precedents and practices. We already have set a precedent in this house that all the laws are harmonized with the Mwongozo Code. Now, if that Mwongozo Code has never been brought here or not, but we have internalized the Mwongozo Code and it's on the Hansard, and we have justified why we are changing directors into Mwongozo Code. So let us not now, when it's not favoring us, start saying, perhaps we were wrong, because then we'll be opening a Pandora's box. That all those laws that we then passed and say the membership of those should be like this, to accord with the Mwongozo Code, that we are actually according to something that is illegal. We have already legitimized it in this house through internalizing and using it into all the various laws. Honorable Speaker, I think...
What's your point of order, Honorable Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the Leader of Majority to misguide the House that in application of practices of this House, issues to do with precedents can take over legal consequence of legislation? If legislation demands that something must be done, is it in order to mislead the House that we can avoid the prescription of law and apply this thing he's calling precedents and traditions of the House? Yeah. In terms of application to the House, can you advise the Leader of Majority how applications of these issues are?
I'm not a lawyer, Honorable Speaker, but I'm a lawmaker. And I know, even when you go for judicial interpretation, the question you ask, what was the thinking of the lawmakers when they made the law? We may not necessarily be guided by all those things, but at least this House has been guided by a certain code that is called Mwongozo Code, and has been quoted extensively, and I sit in every committee of the whole House. And you look at the Hansard, and it's very clear that every justification has been, we are doing this to accord with the Mwongozo Code. So, again, that is up to Honorable Speaker for you to guide this House.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to interrupt my colleague and the Leader of Majority. Mr. Speaker, I think what Honorable TJ raised is that, and you are our Speaker now, the 9th year, is that you use the Constitution, you use the standing orders. In the event, even where the Speaker finds, then you go to traditions of other jurisdictions, you go to practices, then even where you don't find all those, then the Speaker uses standing order number 1. The Speaker, that is the matter. The Leader of Majority is out of order, Mr. Speaker, to mislead this House, that where we are raising a matter of constitutionality, Article 10, Article 118, Standing Order 126, Honorable Otieno Amolo raised other provisions in law. We are now at the constitutionality of a piece of legislation before the House. So you cannot bring the issue of prison, Mr. Speaker. I only want to say that I think the Leader of Majority needs to guide, and the Speaker, thank you, because I'm a ranking member, I must say it. And this has been even the precedence in other jurisdictions, that where you say what happens in the US was similar. If it's not provided for in our standing order, it's not provided in our Constitution, then the Speaker, even in your own ruling, the Speaker, and the lawyers will tell us, even lawyers use other judgments and other authorities written by other professors of law school. So, Mr. Speaker, the matter before us is a matter of whether this amendment, health amendment bill, is constitutional. We are raising the unconstitutionality of it. So the Leader of Majority must refrain himself to that, and don't take us to the side shows of practices and precedents.
In fact, Honorable Speaker, I'm not quite sure how that fits in. But basically what I was requesting of you as you make this ruling is not to dismiss the references to Mwongozo Code, because it has constantly been used in this House. And the fact that it's coming now, it's being challenged now, does not mean what are the implications of all the other laws that have been premised on an application of the Mwongozo Code. Because what we do now has an impact on people going to court and then saying, this has now been quashed. So what happens to all the other laws that are referenced to Mwongozo Code? So I'm just highlighting the issues that came out on that A, the bill has precedent in terms of an amalgamation of laws of a certain sector, with an example of health laws of 2017, and also the tax laws amendment bill. Two, that this bill has more than professional bodies. And if members have a problem with reference to professional bodies, then those should be brought out in debate during the second reading. And indeed, no member has been denied the opportunity to bring amendments in the committee of the whole House, because that's how we do laws. So trying to kill a bill because we don't like its provisions is perhaps not exactly what we would want to do as a House, because we are actually encouraging even the people out there, even the courts, to start telling us, don't do these bills. Yet we have an opportunity on the floor of this House to bring up the issues, bring up the amendments, and refine the law ourselves. It is when the law has passed through the third reading that people can now take it for interpretation. But as of now, it's work in progress. And I would urge that we continue with this work in progress. Let people who have an issue with this bill bring them on the floor of the House. Let it be on the Hansard rather than pronouncements out there or in the media or fighting it on the bunge, on our WhatsApp walls. But let it be on the Hansard here so that every member has an opportunity to see the logic of why a member is opposed to a certain provision or not. And if a member persuades us, we will be able to then bring the amendment at the committee of the whole. And I think that's how we do law. So, Honorable Speaker, I would urge that we don't kill the work, we don't kill all these bodies, we don't kill the spirit of the universal health coverage by stifling debate, because some of us are uncomfortable with the fact that professional or these health management boards are being opened to other professionals other than just the traditional ones. And this is a trend that will be seen not just in the health professions, it will also be seen, the Accountants Act, in the Accountants Council, you have more than accountants sitting on the Accountants Council. And the Engineers Board will have more than engineers sitting on that, because you have lawyers there, you have accountants, and that's what you want to open to ensure that there's a whole expertise and skill base in each of the boards so that they can enrich the decision making rather than people blocking themselves in silos. But we'll be getting through this when we get to actual debate. And we don't need to kill it until we have had an opportunity for the membership to debate for as long as we can and convince one another. So, Honorable Speaker, I urge you to, as you look through the constitutionality, also to look at whether, at what point, Parliament can actually be stopped from carrying out its constitutional work, which is to legislate. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Kaluma.
Yes, I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I've listened to Honorable Duale, our ranking member, and those who have spoken in his support, and they appear to be very persuasive. But, Honorable Speaker, we have also listened to the mover of the bill, or the person under whose name this bill is. Honorable Speaker, while at least I may agree with what Honorable Duale and those speaking in support have said, Honorable Speaker, I don't appear to agree with them in terms of the manner they are proposing that we deal with the matter. Honorable Speaker, this bill is at Order 13. It has not yet been called. a number of us members here, including myself, came possibly to debate it. We are being told that there are unconstitutional provisions within the bill. We are not being told whether it is the entire bill or just some of them. In fairness, Honorable Speaker, I was going to propose for your determination as you determine the issue that we allow this matter to be moved. Then Honorable Duale and those of them who are of the views that there are unconstitutional provisions or provisions which, though constitutional, may appear not to be properly merited, to bring up those issues so that the House makes a decision on this matter once and for all. Honorable Speaker, I fear that if we were to be pushing all these matters to the chair, then we will have a situation where we'll put the chair under a very awkward position, where people or persons initiating bills are blaming the chair of this House instead of the House for killing bills. I therefore wanted to reserve my positions on the matters, and they are very sensitive matters raised. And the lack, Honorable Speaker, is that through their representations, we already know there could be problems. Let this matter be moved, unless the mover or the person under whose hand this bill is will persuade us on those issues. Let question be put and we kill it with alacrity at the second reading. The luck is that they have raised our antennas on it. But Honorable Speaker, I don't think we would be doing justice to your seat to be seen on a bill which appears to be touching all these sectors, that you made that determination on it there without reference to the House. Let the House as an institution make some ultimate decisions on some of these things. Honorable Speaker, with those few, I thank you and I beg.
Well, I can see a few more requests. Honorable Pukose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Having listened very keenly to Honorable Duale, one of the key issues which he raised is the issue about public participation, Honorable Speaker. Because if the medical professionals, nurses, doctors, pharmacists, were not accorded an opportunity to be able to appear before this committee and make their contribution, then public participation means it was not done. So how do we debate something that did not have full public participation? And looking at the ruling by both the High Court and the Court of Appeal in the PPI case, public participation is actually not just to be seen to be done, but it must have been done properly. Honorable Speaker, listening to what the Leader of Majority said about Mwongozo, the Mwongozo, what we've been borrowing is good governance. It is not just a question of the numbers and everything. The code, what we've been borrowing from Mwongozo is good governance. What this bill is intending to do is bring bad governance into professional bodies. When you say you want to open up professional bodies, people form professional bodies for their own interests. If we form a professional bodies for doctors, or there is a professional body for lawyers, at what stage do we need somebody else to come and participate? Instead of having somebody else being put to us that you want this person to be part and parcel of that team. How will you appoint a doctor to say, go and sit now in the board of Law Society of Kenya and deliberate on matters pertaining to Law Society of Kenya? It doesn't happen like that. I'm a member of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board. I'm a member of the Kenya Medical Association. These are professional associations that we sit to do professional development. Once every other time when we have CMEs, continuous medical education, how will you want to have somebody who is not part of you to be in the governing council? It doesn't work like that. So, Honorable Speaker, I just want to stand with what Honorable Kaluma is saying. We'll ask you to be able to give a ruling on the constitutionality, on the public participation issue. But if it fails, then we'll have it debated on the second reading and we kill it from there. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Now, when you use the word kill, you are suggesting you could be murderous, is it? Pukose.
Honorable Speaker, what I meant by killing is that we shall reject it by voting nay.
Honorable Member for Matungulu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with Honorable Kaluma and also Honorable Duale. Mr. Speaker, coming from the medical professional, it is a bit not very clear the intentions of this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to give you a very simple example. You can imagine we change the rules governing KOTU, whereby the Minister for Labor will be guiding the labor organization to elect Atwoli. Mr. Speaker, all these things which are in this bill are squarely professional. Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now, I have a bill from biomedical engineers, professionals, to govern themselves. We have just had a participation in Mombasa with the Committee of Budget, and they have agreed the bill can proceed so long as the members, the biomedical engineers, can pay the subscription and the board does not get any money from the exchequer. Mr. Speaker, most of these professionals bodies here, they rarely get any money from the exchequer. Why do we want to curtail them, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, if you look at the clinical bill, which we passed last parliament, brought by my brother, Sang, it gives even the directions of training and how to report the matters of the profession. These are the professional bodies who are advising the same ministry. How do you make the boss of that professional body the same ministry which is supposed to receive recommendations from these professional bodies to enhance the better health of this country, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I know you are a man of wisdom, and I know you will make a determination. Allow us to proceed with this issue and probably murder it completely, once and for all, at the second reading. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now Honorable Nyikal, Dr. Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I stand to make a contribution to this, I must say I'm a member of the Health Committee. And the first thing I want to talk about is the public participation that was raised by Honorable Duale. What happened is this. When we called public participation, the members, all the professionals that came, there were so many issues with the ministry that what was agreed is that they sit down with the ministry and all those and bring to the committee points on which they are agreed. Then what happened, the ministry actually came with some points that were purportedly agreed. What then surprised the committee is that all the bodies started saying those things they don't know about. So to that extent, actually, in my view as a member of the committee, that public participation was really a sham. And I think I blame the ministry for that. Then, Mr. Speaker, when I come to the contents, in my mind, I'm not a lawyer, but this thing violates basic principles. The lawyers will say their laws, they'll say their constitution, they'll guide us on that. But this violates the principle of representation. In all the boards, we are talking about regulatory boards, and the majority was right. There are some regulatory boards, and there are also management boards. Regulatory boards like the Nursing Council, the Medical Dentist Council, and then there's KEMSA, then there's NHIF, which are actually management boards. Now, when we come to the regulatory boards, then you find that the representation of the various professions are actually, the representatives are appointed by the minister. In fact, in all of them, if you read all of them, they are actually peers, and then I think 3 people appointed by the minister. And so the professionals that are the stakeholders are not represented. Obviously, those people who are appointed in that way will have their allegiance to the minister and not to the interests of the profession. And I think there is something wrong with that constitutionally in terms of representation. Mr. Speaker, then there is another issue that I think is wrong here. The principle of self-regulation. If you have a regulatory authority and the professionals, the people with the technical content are few, 2 or 3, appointed by an authority, the ministry, and then the quorum that you put is such that even in their absence, the deliberations can go on. It is quite possible that you will have a situation where you are even looking at the professional conduct and these people are not there. So how are you going to have self-regulation? How are you going to know if somebody said they didn't look after a patient properly? Do you expect lay people to actually now alone sitting know whether they didn't look after the patient properly? You need technical input. Mr. Speaker, a third violation in my view, Mr. Speaker, is this bill. Mr. Speaker, third violation, this bill fails to make the distinction that the leader of majority was actually talking about. When you have regulatory boards, their structure must obviously be different from boards that are management like KEMSA, where you have a lot of government money, they are giving service and so on. You need a lot of representation of all people there, accountants, so on, and auditors and so on. That's okay. But when you are dealing with the body that is actually regulating professionals, whose income is not even from the state coffers, but by members paying in there, why do you want to bring all these other people? And normally, their funds are even not that much. So why is that necessary? Mr. Speaker, the fourth point is you get the impression that actually, I think leader of majority has said is coming, where there's the impression being created that in the management of, say, the health sector or any other sector, one need not have the technical information. But Mr. Speaker, allow me. There's a strange thing happening in this country. We have the Director General who is acting. This Director General, when they go to WHO, who is the actual custodian of health, is a chair of the executive board of WHO. Now, the chair of the executive board of WHO is actually the boss of the Director General of WHO. So it's actually the boss. So now, in this country, he's acting. So what we are finding out here, Mr. Speaker, is that there is a general feeling that you don't really need technical input in the management of sectors. But let me say this. Even if you take all the ministries, Mr. Speaker, what distinguishes one ministry from another is the technical arm. The management arm of the ministry, the PS, the finance officer, the accountant, all those procurement people, they are the same in all ministries. What will make a distinction is now when you have the technical people, the director of water, the director of agriculture, the director. Now, if then you start to say that in certain bodies you do not need those technical people, what is the source of your information? And the other day here, Mr. Speaker, we actually said we do not need the Director General in the board of NHIF. And yet all the money that is being collected is actually used to purchase health. Who is going to advise that body on what health to purchase? And look at, while we are doing that...
Now, Dr. Nyikal...
I'm coming, Mr. Speaker.
No, you know, Dr. Nyikal, ordinarily I don't like, interrupting you. But see now, the Honorable Duale claimed that the bill is unconstitutional. Now, you, for the longest time, have been dealing with the contents of the bill. In which case then, if you look at your standing order number 85, then you are anticipating debate, because you now are debating the bill and not the issue of constitutionalism or otherwise. So you know.
The last point, Mr. Speaker.
Yes,
I'm
so-
listening to you. The last point, Mr. Speaker, is whereas we have this bill coming in, there is a health act which has not been implemented, and all the amendments you're making could have been actually corrected by that. Maybe that will fall the same area. But I started by saying, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I can see the biggest issue we have here, all the professionals, many of the stakeholders, including even COTU, even NAT, and so on, feel there is no representation for them there. So, Mr. Speaker, I may have gone beyond that, but whatever we do, whether we bring it and kill it, as Kaluma says, or whether we murder it, I think what is important for this House is that we should not go into a debate when we already are assured that actually what we are going to get is actually not going to serve the country. Mr. Speaker, that is my point. Thank you very much. I think we shouldn't spend too much time going to discuss what will not actually be productive for us. The rest are for the lawyers and you to decide. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, can we hear those who are not in some murderous range? Honorable Oudo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to thank the former majority leader for highlighting the issues at hand. Honorable Speaker, it isn't the first time you have been invited to make a ruling on constitutionality of a bill or not. You have been invited several times, and you have made a considered ruling. Honorable Speaker, at the core here, there are two fundamental issues. Number one is public participation. And I think it has been a debate in this country for many, many years. I sit in the Committee of Delegated Legislation. One of the sole issues we have tried to deal with is what constitutes public participation. Is it just a talking show, or is it just something people come, make representation, and the committee or regulator making authority does not give any due consideration? Here is an issue that we need to consider. In the past, Honorable Speaker, when a similar issue was raised, you ordered the committee, respective committee, to go back and do public participation afresh. What is emerging from the representation by members in the Committee of Health, it seems, yes, there was some form of public participation, but it was not public participation as such, it was just a farce. That's the first issue that we need to consider. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, and it has been an argument in this House for some time, that what constitutes miscellaneous amendment? What constitutes an omnibus amendment? Honestly speaking, with so many bills being amended at a go, it becomes extremely difficult for members to give an enriched debate in respect of the matter. Again, we have invited you in this matter many times. You have made rulings the other way. Again, this is an opportunity for you to make a ruling. Thirdly, Honorable Speaker, on the other side, this bill is before the House for debate. During the debate, members persuade each other on the merits or the merits of the bill. Probably it might be important that at this particular time, we test this House, we test the members of this House, that how many of us are keen debaters, how many of us will keenly follow the debate, pick out what is bad, what is good. As my colleagues have said, when we come to voting at the second reading, are we able to vote based on issues? Are we able to vote based on the discussion, or are we merely a chorus house? We vote yes and no without due consideration of the contents and the debates in the House. Honorable Speaker, we have had an argument here many times. During the second reading, we debate bills. Do chairmen of the committees ever bother to listen to what members are saying, so that at the time they prepare the amendments for the committee of the whole House, do they ever consider those issues? We are being invited here, Honorable Speaker, to literally rejig the workings and operations of the committees. Honorable Speaker, at this particular point, I do believe those of us who have issues with this bill, will be candid enough, persuasive enough, persuade our colleagues that the provisions of this bill are bad. Those for the bill will also have their time to persuade us that what is in this bill is good. It is time for members of this House to rise to the occasion, debate soberly, view the issues at hand, whichever way, when it comes to the second reading, at the point of voting, let's vote for the people of Kenya, let's vote otherwise. I would suggest, Honorable Speaker, that you allow the debate to proceed. Let us debate here. It is time to test. Yes, it's time to test whether members really care, whether members come here to debate for the benefit of Kenya or they come here to debate for some other issues, whether they pay attention or not. So that, Honorable Speaker, I would request that you allow we debate this bill at the committee of, at the second reading. Let's now test whether members understand or not. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Now, I think we must bring this to an end because it's just a matter of what is 1 minute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In just 1 minute, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I think the issue that Honorable Duale has raised, for me, the most pertinent issue is a question of public participation. And I think that is what he has anchored his request to you to hinge your decision on. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say it is not the first time. You remember during the aviation bill, the National Aviation Bill, you seized debate on that bill, principally on the question of public participation. And all you did was to ask the committee to go back and ensure that they have done proper public participation. Honorable Speaker, what we are asking you and what Honorable Duale is asking you is probably to give the committee an opportunity to go and conduct proper and actual public participation so that we do not run the risk of spending time, taxpayers' time, and you know, Mr. Speaker, will be paid to sit here and debate that bill in second reading, only to end up being trashed in court because of the issue for public participation. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, because the minute is over, I just want to ask you that it is only fair to Kenyans that you accord the committee time to go back and carry out actual public participation. The other issues we can debate. I want to agree with Oudo.
Member for Dagoretti South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this 1 minute. And what you're being invited to do, Mr. Speaker, is not something strange, and it will not be a first. Mr. Speaker, at this preliminary stage, you're being invited to make a decision on a matter of constitutionality, on a matter that touches on Article 10, on the principles that the Constitution does dictate, and then you're also being invited to make a ruling on whether public participation, sufficient public participation, actually happened on this bill. Mr. Speaker, proceeding without looking at this preliminary issue is inviting this House to participate in an illegality, Mr. Speaker, because it is required by even our laws in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, for us to ensure that everything that is debated here is debated constitutionally, Mr. Speaker. So what you're being invited is not to do is not something.
Member for Nyando.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. A clear reading of the entire Constitution, all the articles, points to something that ought to have been rectified. You look at a tendency of dictatorship, and the new Constitution came in to provide a panacea to that effect, Honorable Speaker. If indeed a proper public participation was not undertaken on this particular health amendment bill, then it should be annulled ab initio, Honorable Speaker. And I know you have created that platform before. You have come up with the traditional rulings that pay much credence to public participation. Our courts of law have stood firmly for the Constitution, and that also includes providing an enabling environment for public participation to occur. But I also remember in part of your rulings you have said that it is very difficult to determine with certainty what amounts to public participation. Does it mean
Majority Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, getting it from the Honorable Duale, Honorable Duale does not dispute that there was public participation. He says there was, but what was submitted to the committee was not utilized properly. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it means that you have to define, Honorable Speaker, in your ruling, what constitutes public participation. Number two, Honorable Speaker, yourself, you've ruled that a matter of constitutionality can be raised at any time during the debate or whatever time a member wants. Now that Honorable Duale has raised an issue of constitutionality, you will have a place to make a ruling on it based on how well you have understood. However, Honorable Speaker, it will also invite you to make a ruling which you have already made before, that the committee report need not to stop a debate of a particular bill. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, you'll have to make a decision as in at what stage.
Member for Chepalungu, finally.
Honorable Speaker, I've listened keenly on contribution from most of the members here, and especially from Dr. Nikal, whom I respect. I've checked and I've seen that he's a member of the Health Committee. I'm wondering whether the threshold of this bill is met before getting into Parliament. And, Honorable Speaker, anything to do with public participation is a very key and very important element that must be subjected to the key stakeholders. Looking at the stakeholders are more than 5. Honorable Speaker, before we kill it, we request that you murder it, Honorable Speaker.
So before you kill it, you request that it be murdered. Anyway, honour members, there are a number of issues that have been raised, and I think to the extent that the issue on Articles 10, 118, 232 have been raised. There may be need for me to look at all what has happened between the committee and those that appeared before it. That is available from the report and from the records, so it should not be problematic. But I think for the time being, just like it is true that a matter raised on constitutionalism may be raised at any stage, we will allow the debate to continue, and the ruling will come also in due course. Because there may be some issues to do with, and you know, the courts have actually really touched on this issue of omnibus. And the courts have guided on a number of occasions that let's not deal with very, very substantive matters. If you're just going to do statute law, miscellaneous amendment law. But that means that then I have to look at the bill as it is and determine what it is, whether it is making very substantive proposals to amend various laws, and where their place would be in the legislative process, as the courts have guided in the past. We have a number of authorities dealing with that matter, and therefore should not be a problem. But for the time being, time allowing, you may proceed. You may proceed. Well, there are some who are intent on murdering, and but I think it's fair. It's fair that also, honor members, you should be available to persuade one another. But just like the Honorable Udo said, you notice there's some trend here. The members who are very keen at debating, and particularly who participate in the committee of the whole house, the next day, when because usually there's no quorum to put the question. The next day when you put the question, the ones that vote have absolutely no idea what it is that they vote for, one way or other. Yeah, that's part of the non-fare paying passengers. They don't pay any fare. They say in Mtaani, they call it sare. Those who, is that, the member for Dagoretti South seems to understand that language very well. They are not fare paying. So, usually that's the other challenge, and I agree with Honorable Oundo that, it's not possible to ensure that those that took part in the serious business of committee of the House are the same ones who come to vote the next day. And especially, you may find that when you have committee of the whole House on a Thursday, and the question will be put on Tuesday afternoon, those ones who just have come from the villages coming to vote one way or other have absolutely no idea, but still they nonetheless vote. And so that's a challenge, Honorable Oundo. It's not possible unless we insist that everything should be by roll call, which will be very, very inconveniencing also for the House. But obviously it has to do with, it has to affect the quality, whether we like it or not. But let's hope that you people are able to persuade one another. But the issue about Honorable Dr. Eseli not being allowed to do a minority report, I think that's a serious one. I think whoever it is that is clerking the committee should be taken for a refresher course, so that they understand that it is your right, the right of every member who wishes to do a minority report to do so. I don't know whether the Honorable Nyikal signed the report for the majority, or the Honorable Mule signed for the majority, but you see now that's why it becomes very difficult. It's not possible for somebody to walk in and expect to be given a chance to speak, because they may not know where it is that we have reached up to this point. So we will leave it at that point. You may commence debates. You may commence debate, but I will also make a determination on the number of issues that have been raised, especially those which touch on the Constitution and the place of the bill, whether it's a miscellaneous amendment bill or not, depending on the proposals contained in it. So we'll leave it at that. The chair of the committee, because we don't want to reopen. We've already closed. No, it doesn't matter. You go to the handstand, because you see now, I mean, surely, yeah, and now it is 5:30, so it's not right. There are some members who have been here since 2:30, or before 2:30. Yes. So but anyhow, she will have an opportunity to move the bill or second. The leader majority, the bill is your name. Very well. Let's go to the next order. Yeah. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you do recall I rose on a point of order some time back, and fortunately, during the special sitting, and the chair, finance, and chair, security were not in the House, but I see today they're in the House. And you did give direction, Honorable Speaker, on the two matters that they were inquiring into, one being the question of the Turkish national, which I had sought a statement on the 10th of August, and the chair security had indicated that it would take him 2 weeks. Honorable Speaker, it's 2 months since then. We are here to get a response. The Honorable Wanga was inquiring onto something that we saw before the committee, and you did direct, Honorable Speaker, from your chair, that it is expected that the two committees would indeed table a report on the inquiry that the Committee on Finance was making on its own motion. You remember, Honorable Speaker, and that's the issue, substantive issue that had risen on.
Go back to settings.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Is communication gadgets. Honorable Speaker, I was saying the issue that the Committee of Finance was inquiring into was the issue that touched on Equity Bank and investments by an East African national in Uganda. And as much as we debated here, and it was indicated that indeed the committee can move on its own motion to inquire into any matter that is of interest to the nation, and the committee had moved on its own motion, made inquiries, had a lot of media blitz with the two issues, the issue of ID and the issue of the inquiry onto investments in Uganda through Equity Bank, Honorable Speaker. You indicated that the two committees must indeed table a report before this House. And Honorable Speaker, up to date, neither the Committee of Finance, neither has the Committee on Security. Honorable Speaker, I don't know whether gadgets are disadvantaging me, but I was just finishing saying even the Committee on Security has neither bothered to respond to this request for statement on the issues that I raised on the 10th of August. And since they are here, maybe Honorable Wanga, since she's here, she can also tell us whether she has begun on her own motion anything to do with the Pandora Papers. Pandora Papers, the Honorable Wanga would be more appraised than the Chair Health, who is asking what is that. Maybe on her own motions, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Wanga can tell us whether she has begun a new inquiry now, since she had a penchant for picking up things from the media. Now these that came from the international media, she may also have picked it up and begun an inquiry, and maybe she can appraise the House also. And we would also expect that if she does that, Honorable Speaker, in line with your ruling, that she will be able to table a report also before the House, so that the members have the opportunity to discuss.
Honorable Mwadi, do you have the statement? Is it ready?
Well, Honorable Speaker, we indeed held a session with the CS, and apart from the answer that it brought, we also requested that we get a written response. We have a preliminary report on what he said, but we need that statement to come so that we can attach to the same.
The report on the issue that
that is on the Turkish national.
On some Turkish national, is it? Food. A fruit vendor.
Honorable Speaker, that statement was sought on one Harun Aydin, who is a Turkish national, and who was purportedly deported by government from here to back to the country. And that is, I think that's a matter he's speaking to.
That's the one, Honorable Ishungwa, you sought a statement on here. Yeah, that is the one. In respect to yourself. No, it is him who sought the statement. He sought a statement. Yeah. No, not a report. The one on 10th of August. What? You don't have a...
Chair, sorry, Honorable Speaker, it is indeed true I sought a statement, and on the day I sought the statement, the chair indicated that the were going to meet the cabinet secretary the previous week, the following week, and give a response in 2 weeks' time. Fortunately or unfortunately, they happened to be in Mombasa with the CS. And that matter, I saw it in the media being canvassed in the meeting with the CS before even the 2 weeks they were saying. So I had expected that maybe the following week or a week after, they would be kind enough to bring to the House what the CS had said. Because indeed, some of the issues that I addressed in the statement was actually on whether Mr. Harun Aidin was actually deported from Kenya. And of course, as per our parliamentary procedures, Honorable Speaker, we expect that if he was actually deported, that deportation orders and all requisite documents would be attached to the report that, or the response to the statement that the chair would respond. From what I hear, he's saying he is waiting for a copy of the statement to attach to the report. A copy of the statement, of course, Honorable Chair, he cannot have canvassed that matter with the CS if he didn't have the issues at hand. Meaning either they had, the committee's clerk had the statement, or the clerk's office can give him a copy of the statement. I even have it on WhatsApp. I can send it to him now, if that's all he needs. In fact, I have just sent it to him. Let me send it to him, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Mwadhi.
Honorable Speaker, I don't know whether he's purporting to be the chair of the committee, but I said here, and if you care to listen, the honorable member, that indeed, before a week was going to be over, we were going to meet with the cabinet secretary and we were going to ask about that matter. That is one thing that he came and orally did a submission. The other issue was that he sought for a statement, and that statement must be brought in the normal way that it comes through the secretariat, and then it is delivered here in the House. So I don't know how he got that statement.
So when is the statement? When are you going to respond to the statement, the request?
Honorable Speaker, give me until next week, Tuesday.
Next Tuesday?
Yes.
Very well. Honorable Anga? Can you give her? You don't have a card, apparently. You see, can you give her? No. Down there.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and my apologies for not having my card. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Ishungwa did raise the issue of my committee looking into purported 15 billion shillings that was loaned by Equity Bank, that was purportedly loaned by Equity Bank to a certain businessman. Honorable Speaker, being the committee responsible for financial institutions in this country and their stability, we felt that this was an important matter, because if a phone call can result in loaning of 15 billion shillings, then it means that we had a cause to worry. And Honorable Speaker, the committee is in the process of inviting other people, including KRA, including the Central Bank of Kenya, and we will get to the very bottom of this matter. And we will not be intimidated, neither will we be rushed, neither will we work on timelines of anybody else. The committee has its timelines, the committee has its schedules, and therefore at the point at which we are ready, we shall present our report on the floor of this House. Honorable Speaker, and that is the way it is. Honorable Speaker, if there are specific timelines, for example, on a petition, we know it's 60 days within which we must bring our report. Or a petition such as what you gave us the other day and gave us 14 days. If on our own motion, we are conducting an inquiry, we will come to the House when we are prepared with the report. We still have to listen to KRA. We still have to listen to Central Bank of Kenya. We still have to listen to the Financial Reporting Center on this very matter. So, Honorable Speaker, we are on track. We will move. This committee will not be intimidated. Neither will we listen to sideshows. We will bring a report to this House that is worthy of the floor of this House. Honorable Speaker, if you open the Pandora's box, the one that Honorable Ichung'wa is talking about, then we will have to look very deeply, and some people will not be smiling anymore. Honorable Speaker, thank you.
No. Maybe there's something that you need to appreciate. That was the committee doing an inquiry on its own motion. So the Honorable Wanga is actually right, because they were not moved by a motion here. It was the committee on its own volition. I think we will. Anyhow, it is what do you call it? Skirting around, or what? Stilettos, some cat walking. Now, please, let's not do that. You know, you are in the hallowed floor of the House. It's not. It cannot be space for cat walking. The Honorable Mwadi, with regard to your matter.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, because I think Honorable Ichung'wa has put it on record that he has a statement which I don't have. But in fact, what he has sent me is a copy of his request for statement. So he doesn't have that statement he's purporting to have, but he has put it on record. No. He said he has the statement and he wants to share with me, but as in terms of the response, he doesn't have, and I want that on record, Honorable Speaker.
Did he say he has a statement? Honorable Ichung'wa, did you say you have a statement? Honorable members, today you are not in the mood of doing business.
Honorable Speaker, you know my good friend and neighbor, Honorable Mwadi, besides being my neighbor, is my good friend. And maybe he was not listening to what I said. I said I made a request for a statement. And he has said that he is waiting for a copy of that statement to attach. Therefore, I said if he needs a copy, I can even WhatsApp a copy to him. And that's what I've just forwarded to him, because the question that I'm asking for a response on is the statement that I sought on the 10th of August, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, more substantially, Speaker, on the other matter to do with Honorable Gladys Wanga, it is indeed true that it was on the committee's own volition. But also, Honorable Speaker, we must, and you remember, Honorable Speaker, when I rose on the point of order, if Honorable Gladys Wanga can listen to me, the Chair for Finance, when I rose on the point of order, I was aware, and I indicated that it is on the committee's own volition. But what I was trying to avoid, Honorable Speaker, is for members of this House or chairs of committees, or even any member of this House, to use our committees to drive certain political perceptions. And Honorable Speaker, it is very possible today that as a member, I can use this floor or use a committee's sitting with the media present to drive certain perceptions regarding the Pandora Papers. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is not fair for Honorable Wanga to tell us because the committee was moving on its own volition, she can take whatever amount of time she desires. Honorable Speaker, it will be an abuse of our own processes and procedures to use the floor of the House or indeed committees of the House to drive political agendas, Honorable Speaker. And it is, I am asking this, Honorable Speaker, on a very serious note, because if you sit as Speaker and allow members then to use either the floor or committees to drive political perceptions, then we may as well know we are free to do that, and we can use our committees then to discuss in media and elsewhere on the Pandora Papers and those people who have stashed money out of our economy and invested elsewhere. Then, and we can also do it on our own motions, Honorable Speaker. Therefore,
Now, Honorable Ishungwa, Honorable Ishungwa, the Honorable Wanga stood and explained that yes, they moved on their own volition, and they took evidence from certain people. She has indicated that they are yet to take evidence from KRA, from Central Bank, and from Financial Reporting Center. Are we disputing that they are yet to take evidence from those? Because if that is what she has said, and it's on hand, then some other date, you could rise now and ask whether they have taken evidence from those people. But now that she has said that those are the people they are waiting to take evidence from, well, we should give her the time to do that, the committee. Then, if obviously we know if something appears like it's taking too long, not little too long, then as a house we will make a determination, one way or other. Let's allow the committee, as the Honorable Wanga has said, time to take the evidence from those three institutions and maybe any other, so that let's not cast aspersions. Yeah. So please, let's not now deal with those. No, I don't want us to open. Not even that box. even that one now. Don't open that one, Honorable Kelo.
I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you have already given a direction on that matter. But I want to invite the House to Article 1 and Article 95 of the Constitution on representation. And we are here to represent the plight of the Kenyan people. Honorable Speaker, a point at which we have to represent the interest of foreigners. I think it is incumbent upon every person to come out with full disclosure so that we don't just engage in exercises here in futility, Honorable Speaker. If such a thing would have happened to a Kenyan citizen in Turkey, I can assure you it will not invite the attention of the Turkish parliament, Honorable Speaker. Just 2 years ago, a media personality was killed in the same Turkey, and it was never discussed in their parliament. Why would then a member of parliament of great reputation, such as my friend Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, engage us in a charade of a foreigner whose interests have not been declared here to date? And Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah hasn't told us in specific terms why he's very much interested in this particular individual, Honorable Speaker, and I thank you.
Well, he sought a statement, and the Honorable Mwadi has said he's going to give the statement by next week. So now, honourable members, let's now relax. Let's relax. Let's go to the next order.
Order number 11, Committee of the Whole House.
Order, Honorable Ishung'wah. Please, members, take your seats. Honorable Ishung'wah, you will keep your peace. Now, we will move very fast, honorable members. We have got two bills to work on. One is the presidential reservation on the Refugee Bill, National Assembly Bill number 62 of 2019, and it will be fast, honorable members. So we can proceed now. the question which is at clause 8 be part of the bill.
Thank you, Chair. I beg to move that clause 8 be amended as per the order paper, and this is just to allow for separate panels of the tribunal so that they can move faster with the cases. So it's to allow for designation of clerks to the various panels. I beg to move, Honorable Chair.
So then I propose the question which is at clause 8 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. Honorable Oundo Ojiambo.
Chair, yes, for sure I agree to the extent that to speed up the process, but I thought this purely administrative matter, does it really need to be legislated? Just wondering, purely administrative, because once the tribunal is in place, they should be allowed to organize their ways. Is it really necessary for it to be put in legislation? Just wondering, probably they can just explain for us to understand.
Well, let's hear Honorable Wanga, though of course.
If you don't outline it, then they might not feel the need to operate in those panels. And that is why we currently have 500 cases pending before the Tax Appeals Tribunal. The other idea is to ensure that through this we are able to deal as quickly as possible with all these tribunals, because you're dealing with money here. The more they stays, the more, and if they haven't found the need so far, this is just to push them in that direction. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
So then what is it, Honorable Kaluma?
Yes, Honorable Chair, we are moving the tribunals from the executive to the judiciary as the Constitution demands. Within the judiciary, they have the staff and the employment scheme. I therefore don't think this provision, Honorable Chair, is necessary. Automatically, immediately it moves, the Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary will designate clerks there. So this is a superfluous provision.
Well, maybe, but well, I think what Honorable Wanga could be asking is whether it's harmful at all. And well, it's a good idea that, I mean, it's good members are debating.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, so let's put the question which is at clause 8. Be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? And as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. And I put the question which is at clause 8 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? And as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 9.
I propose the question which is at clause 9 be part of the bill. Honorable Wanga.
I thank you, Honorable Chair. I beg to move that clause 9 be amended as per the order paper in line with the amendment we have just made earlier to provide for room for the panels. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
So then I propose a question which is at clause 9 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. I put the question which is at clause 9 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I put the question which is at clause 9 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? And as our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 10, clause 11, clause 12, clause 13.
I propose a question which is at clause 10, 11, 12, and 13 be part of the bill. And I put the question which is at clause 10, 11, 12, and 13 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 14.
I propose a question which is at clause 14 be part of the bill. Honorable Wanga. Order. Order.
Honorable Chair, I beg to move that clause 14.
There are 3 members up there. Order, members. Huh?
Clause 14 be amended as per the order paper, and this is to put
the member for Larry, and your team, please maintain some peace and consult in lower tones. Proceed, Honorable Wanga.
Thank you. I beg to move that clause 14 be amended as per the order paper, and this is to set timelines within which the tribunal can set aside or vary an order at 14 days, Honorable Chair. I beg to move.
So then I propose the question which is at clause 14 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. I put the question which is at clause 14 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of our contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it, and I put the question which is at clause 14 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of our contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 15, clause 16, clause 17.
I propose the question which is at clause 15 through to 17 be part of the bill. And I put the question which is at clause 15, 16, and 17 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of our contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 18.
I propose the question which is at clause 18 be part of the bill.
Thank you, Chair. I beg to move that clause 18 be amended as per the order paper, and this is just moving from the Public Service Commission to the Judicial Service Commission. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
So I propose the question which is at clause 18 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. And I put the question which is at clause 18 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Wanga. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. And I put the question which is at clause 18 as amended be now part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
New clause 7A.
1A.
Let us have the chair moving second reading of the new clause.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I beg to move that new clause 7A be now read a second time. Honorable Chair, this is to remove reporting, the annual report for the Tribunal from reporting to the Cabinet Secretary to reporting to the Chief Justice.
Very good.
I beg to move.
So I propose a question which is that new clause 7A be now read a second time. I put the question which is that new clause 7A be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. And I propose the question which is that new clause 7A be now part of the bill. I put the question which is that new clause 7A be now part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
New clause 10A.
The mover, please move second reading of the new clause.
I thank you, Honorable Chair. I beg to move that new clause 10A be now read a second time. Honorable Chair, this clause is varying the penalty for offense of contempt of the tribunal from 100,000 to 500,000. I beg to move, Honorable Chair.
Very well. And I propose a question which is that new clause 10A be now read a second time. I put the question which is that new clause 10A be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. I propose a question which is that new clause 10A now be part of the bill. And I put the question which is that new clause 10A be now part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 15A.
I propose a question. No, let's have the mover moving second reading of the new clause.
Thank you, Chair. I beg to move the new clause 15A be now read a second time. It relates to filing of documents to the tribunal, and we are just providing that it can it will be made in writing, it can be submitted by hard copy or electronic means.
Now the member for Larry. I know the kind of team that you lead. It's in, so please don't lead it here. So let's proceed. So then I propose the question which is that new clause 15A be now read a second time. I put the question which is that new clause 15A be read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. And I propose the question which is that new clause 15A be part of the bill. And I put the question which is that new clause 15A be now part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
cross 1A.
Mover, please move second reading.
I thank you, Honorable Chair. I beg to move that new clause 1A be now read a second time. It relates to defining the commission, in this case, not as the Public Service Commission, but as the Judicial Service Commission. I beg to move, Honorable Chair.
Very well, and I propose the question, which is that new clause 1A be now read a second time. I put the question, which is that new clause 1A be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. And I propose the question, which is that new clause 1A be part of the bill. I put the question, which is that new clause 1A be now part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Title?
I propose the question, which is that the title be the title to the bill. I put the question, which is that the title be the title to the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Cross 1?
I propose the question, which is that clause 1 be part of the bill. And I put the question, which is that clause 1 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Now let's have the mover to move reporting. Yes, Leader Majority Party.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Tax Appeals Tribunal Amendment, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2021, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Very well. And so I put the question, which is that the committee do report to the House. I put the question, which is that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Tax Appeal Tribunal Amendment, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2021, and its approval thereof with amendments. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Honorable members, Mr. Speaker.
Which one are we starting with?
Very well. We shall start with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on the President's recommendations to the Refugees Bill. Chair.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the President's recommendation to the Refugee Bill, National Assembly Bill number 62 of 2019, and its approval thereof without amendments.
The mover. Leader Majority.
I, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report, and I also request the Honorable Mwadhi, Chair of the Committee on National Security, to second the motion for agreement with the report of the Committee of the Whole House.
Honorable Mwadhi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I second, and this is basically to pave way for recognition, protection, and management of refugees to accord with the various international protocols. I second.
Honorable members, I then propose the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. The Honorable Kaluma. The Honorable Kaluma, you have something to say to this.
Yes. Honorable Speaker, what has happened this afternoon, even as we move to conclusion, is historic in our country. Honorable Speaker, this refugees bill has walked a very long journey, If you remember, Honorable Speaker, in the last term, the term of the 11th Parliament, this particular bill was moved. His Excellency, the President returned it because of inadequate public participation. Honorable Speaker, this time around, we engaged in a lot of public participation with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, Refugee Consortium of Kenya, and various other agencies. Honorable Speaker, why I stand to speak at this time is that for the first time in the history of this Parliament, for the 2 parliaments have been in this Parliament, Honorable Speaker, the President has referred a bill back to Parliament with provisions we totally agree with, and I think it is something we needed to say in signature. The President has not only improved the bill which we had passed as Parliament and sent to him for assent, but, Honorable Speaker, the President has brought provisions which are going to better the welfare of refugees. The refugees in Kenya, whether they be Dadaab, whether they be in Kakuma, whether integrated, can now not only work within Kenya because of this intervention by the President, but also across the East African community. Honorable Speaker, this is a great one. But 2, we are saying in terms of the purchases, in terms of sustaining the refugees, Honorable Speaker, it is going to be focused on our goods. It's a great thing. I would pray that we expedite the remaining processes. And my pleasure, Honorable Speaker, is that following the passage of this, which I would urge my colleagues to support, I think we are going to occupy a very special place in matters human rights and refugees protection, both within the region and across the country. And I congratulate the President for a well-thought intervention by way of this memorandum. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. And the Chair is doing great, and the majority leaders, they move.
The Honorable Undo. Honorable Speaker, allow me to make a comment on the tax appeal. The Honorable Undo, we are not there. Oh, okay, thank you. We are not there. The Honorable Pukose? He's not in, but he had shown interest. The Honorable member at the back there, is that the Honorable Masara? Yeah, the Honorable Masara, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm a very happy man today. For the first time in the history since I joined this Parliament, my committee has done a real job. I'm a member of the Committee of Administration and Security and National Administration. Chairman, we went through the journey. We went to the refugees camp. We met them in Kakuma, Dadaab, Nakuru. And this bill is going to put Kenya internationally as one of the countries which the President has done a well-researched memorandum, Mr. Speaker. Reasons to, why I'm saying this is that for the first time in this country and this region, refugees are going to get opportunity to live like any other person, because they'll get opportunity to do business, to work, and to earn a living. But above all, for the country which hosts refugees are not going to take refugees as a burden. Because as things stand now, Mr. Speaker, refugees really becomes a burden of the hosting country. But with passing this bill, Mr. Speaker, will allow them to do business and operate and work. Because when we went to Dadaab, some people came there, some young people came there before attaining any academic qualification. But by the time we went there, you'll find that they are able to do something which can enable them to earn a living. But the previous law was not allowing them to do the same. Therefore, I want to congratulate the chairman, our able chairman, because he has steered as well, the committee members, but above all, the wisdom His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta has, because this is it was also a very controversial bill, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, this country is moving toward a very right direction. Since the handshake, Mr. Speaker, things are moving on well. When Raila greeted Uhuru Kenyatta as the president, Mr. Speaker, that's the reason, the effect of such a things you are seeing. Before, President used to be having a lot of pressure. He was stigmatized because things were not moving. But since the handshake, he had time even to reason, to research, to read, and propose document which can be accepted by the whole House, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God bless them to get opportunity to live like any other person, because they'll get opportunity to do business, to work, and to earn a living. But above all, for the country which hosts refugees are not going to take refugees as a burden. Because as things stand now, Mr. Speaker, refugees really becomes a burden of the hosting country. But with passing this bill, Mr. Speaker, will allow them to do business and operate and work. Because when we went to Dadaab, some people came there, some young people came there before attaining any academic qualification. But by the time we went there, you'll find that they are able to do something which can enable them to earn a living. But the previous law was not allowing them to do the same. Therefore, I want to congratulate the chairman, our able chairman, because he has steered as well, the committee members, but above all, the wisdom His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta has, because this is it was also a very controversial bill, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, this country is moving toward a very right direction. Since the handshake, Mr. Speaker, things are moving on well. When Raila greeted Uhuru Kenyatta as the president, Mr. Speaker, that's the reason, the effect of such a things you are seeing. Before, president used to be having a lot of pressure. He was stigmatized because things were not moving. But since the handshake, he had time even to reason, to research, to read, and propose document which can be accepted by the whole House, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God bless Kenya. May God bless you as a Speaker, our chairman and the committee. Thank you very much. May God bless you.
Honorable members, I then put the question which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Will as members of that opinion say aye?
Aye.
Will as members of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, I direct that the next steps on this bill be undertaken where the matter will be settled down for. Honorable members, I then propose the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. The Honorable Kaluma.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, again, let me thank the committee in charge of finance for transacting this bill. Honorable Speaker, we passed the Constitution in 2010, and within it we said all judicial functions will be by the judiciary, and all tribunals would move to the judiciary. And this has overstayed. The fact of the matter is that we want some judicial independence in the decisions being made by such tribunals, so that even if it is dealing with taxes, we don't want a tribunal which is under the executive choosing who to favor and who not to favor, who to pursue and who not to pursue. With this thing going to the judiciary, I know there will be impartial, dispute resolution around taxes in a manner that will save these monies we possibly could have been losing. But Honorable Speaker, while appreciating the majority leader for bringing this particular bill, to bring this critical tribunal under the judiciary as the others are, Honorable Speaker, may I request the majority leader also to look at the system of courts we call the court martial. Because, Honorable Speaker, previously there was a peer review mechanism. Despite our constitution saying that the court martial is one of the 3 subordinate courts we have, Honorable Speaker, you still have officers, non-judicial officers presiding over the court, and the person, Honorable Speaker, called judge advocate, merely advising them as they decide. And they decide as they want. So that we have a lot of injustices still being pervaded by our court martials across the country. Honorable Speaker, as we commend, the majority leader would request him to look at that also. And we support that this one progresses to the next level. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Kaluma, very well spoken. We must have a very clear system where decisions can be made and the principles of stare decisis can be developed in this jurisprudence for tax matters in this country. The Honorable Shadrach Mose, member for Kitutu Masaba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance to also join my colleagues in really saying that this is a serious milestone that we have achieved. Honorable Speaker, I think moving the tribunal to the judiciary is one of the landmark decisions that has been made. As you would appreciate, Honorable Speaker, is that in a number of occasions, there are a lot of procrastinations and the bureaucracies that actually have been hanging around the tribunals. And more particularly, this particular tribunal that deals with taxes. It is going to actually assist a lot in the expeditious disposal of many of these tax matters that have actually been delaying in tribunals that in a number of administration are really skewed, are always, like waiting to hear which direction they want to take. But now with the alignment of these tribunals to the judiciary, I am sure that we are going to see expeditious disposal and the determination of matters. I really herald this kind of achievement that we have attained today. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, allow me then to put a question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, I direct that the third reading in this regard be undertaken when this matter will be set down again on the order paper for consideration, and direct that we move on to the next business on the order paper.
Order number 12, motion. The Landlord and Tenant Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2021, second reading. Resumption of debate interrupted on Wednesday, September 29, 2021.
It's okay, but you just say resumption of debate.
The Honorable Shadrach Mose, member for Kitutu Masaba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to proceed from where I left. That, Honorable Speaker, the Landlord and Tenants Bill, this is, again, as I said, one of the serious milestones, the Honorable Speaker, that we have achieved by way of this bill. Honorable Speaker, the bill seeks to introduce a legal framework which balances the interest of landlords vis-a-vis tenants. And the Honorable Speaker, I'm sure you are aware that there has been a lot of confusion in this area. And more particularly, Honorable Speaker, that the landlord, I could say, have actually been very draconian in the way they the tenants have also been cunning in trying to avoid their obligation. But this particular bill, Honorable Speaker, balances the interest of both parties. And in so doing, the landlord will be able to earn a just living out of the investment that they have invested in putting up their buildings. In most cases, the Honorable Speaker, you find that maybe a landlord has taken a facility and put up premises. But because the tenants are also cunning, you find that they are not able to earn a just and fair earning from their investment. But this bill, Honorable Speaker, balances the rights, the obligations of both parties. And Honorable Speaker, one of the things that is really a serious improvement of this is that because the aspect of rent is actually supposed to be mutual, but in a number of occasions that is not done. What is normally done is that the landlord arbitrarily, increases the rent because that is they contend that the property is theirs, and that really undermines the rights of the tenant. But this bill, Honorable Speaker, gives the tribunal an opportunity to balance both rights. And it's on this score, Honorable Speaker, that also this bill gives the Chief Justice the right to establish tribunals across the country. And I would be saying that this is really a step in the right direction, because establishment of tribunals across, more particularly the 47 counties, would also ensure that the landlord and the tenant are able to access those tribunals, and that there will be proper adjudication of their matters. Honorable Speaker, I have also seen in the Act that the tribunal has been empowered to deal with the issues of illegal and arbitrary evictions. In fact, they've been empowered. What I used to see previously was that the landlord could arbitrarily, throw out the tenant from their premises. And at the moment the tenant moved to the tribunal, they would be told the tribunal has no powers to reinstate you. But in this particular bill, I am seeing a bill that now gives the tribunal the powers to reinstate a tenant where the eviction has been unfair. Honorable Speaker, there are general good issues that have actually come up, that the tribunal would also have the right to determine what is fair rent. They would also have the right to deal with the increase of rent, increase or decrease. The issue of the notice of termination of tenancy has also been addressed in this bill. There is also the issue of subletting, or the issue of assigning some premises. Honorable Speaker, you realize that many tenants in this country take tenancy and they actually sublet. And in that circumstance, you find that the tenant who has sublet from the main tenant is actually not protected. But this bill stamps authority in also dealing with some of those issues. Honorable Speaker, we have also seen in this bill where now the landlord is actually required to keep records of the tenancy, of the payment of rent, so that once an issue arises, Honorable Speaker, you find that it's easier to be able to determine those issues because they are well documented and they are well recorded. Unlike in the past, where the landlord was not obligated to do that. Honorable Speaker, this is therefore a clear improvement from what usually used to happen, particularly also on the issue of distress for rent and the way the auctioneers used to behave. I mean, they were hooligans. They would just come up with all sorts of ways and, means and maneuvers of getting a tenant out of their tenancy. But with this bill, coming into effect, those will be issues of the past, and that sector, the housing sector, Honorable Speaker, in this country, clearly needs that we rein on it, we improve so that it's very clear and we do not have very unethical and unorthodox means of dealing with the tenants, more particularly the tenants who are, the cadre that is normally threatened. With that, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Very well. The Honorable Oundo Ojiambo, member for Funyola.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this matter. Honorable Speaker, let me go on record. I've spent almost 30 or so donkey years administering the various legislation in this particular field. So it's an area that I'm extremely conversant, and I know the challenges that have been there before that led to this particular bill in the House today. Honorable Speaker, for record purposes, the idea to collapse the various bills, various acts dealing with the relationship between the landlord and the tenant has been on the table since early 1990s. All along, we have had the Districts for Rent Act, the Rent Restriction Act, Landlord and Tenant Shops, Hotels and Catering Establishment Act that have generally set the tone or determine the relationship between the landlord and the tenant. Honorable Speaker, a relationship always arises between a tenant and a landlord. And this more so, a landlord is an investor who has invested in a property, was invested in an asset for the sole purposes of getting returns. And the returns could be regular income in form of rent, as well as capital appreciation, which can be realized at the point of disposal. A tenant is somebody who is seeking shelter, has no place of his own, and has got no capacity presently to have an own housing. So it is a purely a commercial arrangement, an economic arrangement, where there is demand and there is supply. Obviously, that indicates that some fundamentals that needs to be observed as we move forward. Second, Honorable Speaker, there has been this talk, everybody in this country requires housing. Even though the definition of housing has been misunderstood all over by people who do not understand the principles and policies of housing. It does not mean housing is own housing. As long as you have shelter, you are able to pay for it, you indeed have housing. So therefore, naturally, we would have a legislative framework that underpins or organizes the sector as an economic activity and to some extent as a social activity. Honorable Speaker, many times there has been cries and there has been complaints from both sides of the divide. The landlords have complained that the existing laws, especially dealing with the so-called controlled and restricted tenancy, have been a major distortion of the market, has been a major disincentive to invest in housing and any form of housing or real estate that is controlled by those restrictive acts of parliament. On the other side, Honorable Speaker, the so-called tenants and occupants at a cost or at a fee have complained that the landlords have acted draconianly and outside the law in terms of increasing the rent, in terms of terminating the tenancy, in terms of eviction, and in terms of maintaining the fabric or the physical structure of the properties. And that's why this journey began when I was a member of the Executive Council Committee of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, and we started this journey with the Ministry of Lands, Housing, and Urban Development that it was then. I'm happy we have culminated into a combined bill that seeks, in clause 65, to repeal the various bills I've referred to, but luckily enough, they preserve all the matters before the relevant tribunals for the purpose, for the time being. Honorable Speaker, the bill basically sets the terms and conditions of the relationship. But more fundamental, Honorable Speaker, it says the tribunal, a single tribunal, like in the past where we used to have separate tribunal, one for residential housing, another one for commercial. And luckily and good enough, Honorable Speaker, it moves the management of the tribunal from the minister in charge of the matter present now to Judicial Service Commission as required in the Constitution. It is hoped in such a manner, therefore, we would have a more robust, more professional run tribunal that's able to offer justice before the people, the litigants who come before it. I've had many occasions, Honorable Speaker, to appear before BPRT, that's Business Premises Rent Tribunal, as an expert. And you could see the shortcomings, you could see the lack of capacity in arbitrating the matters before them. We do believe that these changes, Honorable Speaker, will make the tribunal more accountable and better at arbitrating issues at hand. Honorable Speaker, I must commend whoever drafted the bill has tried the best. However, there are fundamental mistakes, again, seems to be creeping back. That was the main cause of complaint based on the past, the existing legislation that we are purporting to delete by this one. Honorable Speaker, the world all over, through literature, there seems to be a conclusion that any form of rent controls based on the amount of rent paid is counterproductive in the market. It distorts the market. Honorable Speaker, if there are any people in this country that are underhoused or inadequately housed at the low income, the so-called, those ones under the rent, the controlled rent, restricted rent of Kenya shillings 2,500 and below, those are the people who are underhoused or inadequately housed simply because no sane investor would want to invest in that category of housing and have to spend eons in the tribunal trying to resolve even a basic issue between the landlord and the tenant. It has always been the talking all over. Literature and research has been shown, and we'll prove that later, that any form of rent controls ends up being counterproductive and does not help in enhancing the housing sector and protecting the rights and interests of the various actors. Honorable Speaker, again, the second issue that seems again to have come back here, that seems that it might have to be looked at later, is the issue of the protections of rights. A tenant has got is expected to have some rights. The landlord is expected to have some rights. Looking at the bill, Honorable Speaker, it's jumbled up. It's never clear exactly why each party gets their rights. Honorable Speaker, there are quite a number of issues in the bill that not come very clear. Again, as I maintain, a tenancy is a commercial arrangement between the landlord and the tenant. The talk all over the world is we need to have less government, less interference, less high-handedness by the government in matters of commerce, so that there should be less interference. Honorable Speaker, one of the issues when we are doing the ease of doing business, before it was scrapped by World Bank because of unethical practices, has been the issue of how we handle our property laws. One of the reasons why our ranking has never gone higher than expected to go is because our laws are draconian and they become an impediment in solving issues. Honorable Speaker, we seem to find that in this bill, the same trend, the same practice has been maintained, and we'll have endless cases before the tribunal and defeating the whole purposes why we chose to basically make these changes. Honorable Speaker, another issue that seems to be also not very clear is the process of eviction. Process of eviction. The bill has got various provisions dealing with eviction. Honorable Speaker, for you to evict a tenant, there must be a justifiable cause. There must be a reason that has arisen. A tenancy has lapsed, has ended. Discussions to extend have failed. So what do you want the landlord to do where the tenant refuses to move out? On the flip side, why would you allow a tenant on flimsy ground during the subsistence of a tenancy purport to terminate a tenancy and evict a tenant? Honorable Speaker, there's so much more to be said, but I do believe that the Committee of the Whole House will raise sufficient issues to be addressed and will deal with the matter. I support Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Kiaraho. Member for Kalau.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to venture into this issue. Honorable Speaker, I must say I've looked at this bill very keenly, and I must submit, as much as holistically, the bill has very good intentions and very good points. I have identified some gray areas which require some streamlining. Honorable Speaker, as the bill seeks to consolidate all the laws on residential and commercial tenancies and to ensure regulation of the sector in Kenya, and more so, to introduce a legal framework which balances the interests of the landlords and tenants aimed at promoting the sustainable growth of the sector, of the rental sector in Kenya. Honorable Speaker, some of the issues I have identified as I went through the bill, which require to be looked into, and as you are talking, just as the immediate former speaker mentioned, there are some areas which need to be relooked. And as we are talking, I'm in the process of coming up with some amendments, which I will introduce as we go to the third reading. And just to mention a few, Honorable Speaker, one area I found to be a little bit confusing and contradicting is this issue of termination of tenancy without reference to the tribunal, whereby it states the landlord has given that a landlord shall be entitled to terminate a tenancy without reference to the tribunal upon the following grounds. One, that is section 25, subclause A, the landlord has given prior notice of not less than 24 months in the case of business premises and not less than 12 months in the case of residential premises. Honorable Speaker, I stand to be corrected because I know most of the residential leases as it stands, actually most of them, they go for 1 year, renewable depending on the mutual agreement between the tenant and the landlord. And when you say that for you to evict, say to terminate a tenancy, say a residential tenancy, we are talking of 12 months. That by itself, there is actually, it is contradicting. I feel, in my opinion, Honorable Speaker, the 24 and 12 months termination notice by the landlord for commercial and residential tenants is too long. And on my view, it should be reduced to 3 months for residential and 6 months for commercial. On the same note, I feel in section 32, subclause 2, whereby it states the landlord should be at liberty, I feel the landlord should be at liberty to allow or decline any subletting request without giving reasons. This is one of the areas with a lot of disputes, and these issues of subletting should be scrapped from the bill. If you look at the section 58, whereby the landlord, I feel the landlord should be allowed to use the services of a debt collector, auctioneer, to recover any outstanding rent arrears without seeking approval from the tribunal. As Honorable Uda said, I think in the 90s, there is a commission which had been constituted, which was looking at the Distress Act, and I think they came up with a very well thought document. And in my view, Honorable Speaker, for us, even at committee level, and the other people who have contributed as we are coming up with this bill, I feel we should not water down what has been achieved their area. This is one very sensitive area, and since the main objective is actually to come up with a well-harmonized document which will protect both the landlords and the tenants, I do feel some of these issues, they need to be looked at in a very sober manner. If need be, even if it's input of professionals, if at all we have not achieved what exactly we are looking at. But this is one area we cannot just afford to jump into because it can be actually a recipe of chaos. If we look at some of the issues in the bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, we look at the issue of timelines of dispute resolution by the tribunal. Section 7 of the bill states that the tribunal must determine a dispute within 3 months, failing which the chairperson shall record the reasons and immediately fix a date. Even with the best intentions, Mr. Speaker, the dispute resolution process can be dragged out of parties, resulting into losses and inconveniences, and once parties intentionally breaking the law as the required process is ineffective. Suggestion is to provide a maximum of 45 days within which disputes must be resolved with the following time frame. An applicant to lodge a dispute together with supporting evidence on day one, a respondent to provide its response within 14 days, and tribunal to make a determination within 14 days. This totals to 35 days and therefore leaves a buffer of additional 10 days within the maximum prescribed 45 days. On the same note, on the issue of timeline of dispute resolution by tribunal, because this is very key and very important, considering for the developers who have put up these units, let's all take into consideration they have put in money, and some of them probably they are paying mortgages. So the sooner these disputes are resolved, the better for the parties concerned. As I was saying in section 45, there is no defined timeline for provision of a variation under section 45 of the bill, which can lengthen the process to the disadvantage of both the landlord and the tenant. And Mr. Speaker, sir, given the Kenya's leadership in digital platform, I suggest we should encourage the integration of digital interface whereby all tribunal applications and determinations will be available on a digital portal. This will assist in promoting strict timelines kept by the tribunal and promote the availability of data on market rentals, which is itself will promote efficiencies in the tribunal. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the issue of let's have equity of risk. If you look at section 25, subclause 1C, it states that a landlord can terminate a lease without reference to a tribunal if a tenant has defaulted for 3 consecutive months. We suggest that the period after which a landlord can terminate a lease without reference to the tribunal should be linked to the period of security deposit held by the landlord. So, for example, if a landlord holds 3 months security deposit, then the landlord needs to wait for a 3-month period of rent default prior to terminating the lease. On the same note, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at section 59 and section 60 of the bill, whereby it requires the landlord to keep a unit for 60 days in case of a tenant's death or abandonment, this places undue burden, hardship on a landlord for events outside its control. I suggest a period of 30 days in case of death of a tenant and 15 days in case of abandonment of goods by a tenant. Let's note, landlords are paying facilities on their property which are due even when there is no tenant. This provision disadvantages the landlord who may have a ready tenant but was out because of time. If we look at another key concern which we need to look at still on the equity of risk, that is section 3, subclause 1, which states the bill will not apply to residential premises whose monthly rent does not exceed such amount as the Cabinet Secretary may prescribe. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is currently not clear whether the Act will not apply to informal settlements, as it is unknown what the rent floor will be. Hence, extensive stakeholder consultation is required in determining this rent floor, and the same should be adjusted in line with the market forces at a minimum of every 5 years. Mr. Speaker, sir, some of these issues which I've just pointed out or mentioned on, we're in the process of coming up with various amendments. And as Honorable Oda just said, that even he has noticed there are quite a number of grays which need to be relooked. I actually would request probably we join forces with other people personally, probably who have felt or found areas which need to be streamlined. And I believe if we do so, we end up coming up with a very clean document which will be good for all of us. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
The Honorable Kirao, you have raised very fundamental concerns, and which I believe go to the root of coming up with this particular bill. I think your last comment goes to that probably you should link up with the Honorable Undo and approach the leader of majority
so that we come up with a law that will be protecting capital in this country, and at the same time protecting the underprivileged who cannot afford to put up their own shelters in this country. But we should not do it at the expense of those who have invested to punish them unduly. So I think this is an area that needs some polishing, and you have spoken well to it. And I urge you and the Honorable Undo that to be useful to this country in that regard, so that we can polish up those areas and come up with a law that will be useful to all of us in this area. Honorable members, the time being 7 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, 6th October 2021 at 9:30 a.m.
Who will stand with you anytime that you have business in this house that is pro-people. I want to tell you, Leader of Majority, indeed, we were lobbied. We were lobbied to have this bill defeated, and Leader of Majority, I want to hear this. We were